What is solving today's most pressing challenges, like workforce readiness and equitable access to opportunity, relied not on one sector, but on the power of community and collaboration. Welcome to Think Difference, the podcast where educators, innovators, nonprofits, and industry leaders come together to help shape the future. Here, we explore how collective action can transform not just classrooms or boardrooms, but entire communities. Stick around for stories, strategies, and conversations that spark real-world change as we make the weirdest connections to transact a win-win. Because at MindSpark, we don't just think different, we think difference. We're your hosts, Keisha Miller
and Lauren Schaefer.
And in this episode around career and technical education, we're sitting down with Ryan Seeley, partner of industry for the Cherry Creek School District and the Cherry Creek Innovation Campus. Join us today as we talk about the role of industry in the classroom, work-based learning, and pathways to higher education.
Ryan Seeley is a dedicated and experienced education leader with over 15 years of service as a professional school counselor with the Cherry Creek School District. Before entering education, Ryan spent 7 successful years in private corporate finance as a top producer with HSBC, gaining valuable insight into industry operations, workforce expectations, business development, and driving revenue growth. 3 years ago, Ryan transitioned into his role of partner of industry for Cherry Creek School District and the Cherry Creek Innovation Campus. Within his role, he leads strategic initiatives designed to bridge the gap between education and workforce development. He is responsible for cultivating high-impact industry partnerships with local and regional industry leaders. Ryan specializes in building pipelines of talent that support student career readiness through internships, apprenticeships, micro-internships, and entry-level work opportunities. Additionally, he works with these industry leaders to ensure educational programs remain aligned with the evolving demands of today's job market. With a strong foundation in counseling, leadership, post-secondary planning, and business development, Ryan combines his deep educational insight with his previous industry experience to drive meaningful outcomes for his students in the community. His work continues to shape innovation within education and empowers his students to thrive in both college and career. So, yay! Welcome, Ryan. We're so happy to have you here today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for such a warm introduction.
Yeah. Do you want me to read the question? Yeah. Okay, let's get started. So, can you first, Ryan, beyond your bio, just tell us a little bit about an educator who was incredibly impactful on your career or just kind of on your journey through education overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think about one that sticks out real particularly to me would be my U.S. high school. I'm sorry, my high school U.S. history teacher, Mr. McKinney. I still remember him to this day, and he had a huge impact on me, not only in my education, but my really like how I conduct myself as an individual. Um, One of the most powerful things he did with us in the class, and it's going to sound crazy if there's educators hearing this right now, they'll probably think that would never work, but I tell you it did. Mr. McKinney would leave class when we would take tests, and he would always say, there's two things you're going to get tested on today. Number one, do you know the material, right? But the second test is going to be kind of who you are as an individual and your integrity. So he would basically say, I'm going to leave in the classroom, and those that want to cheat, you can cheat, and those that don't want to cheat won't cheat. And he would leave the classroom, and you would see kids. I remember looking around, and you could see the kids who would be cheating, and then the kids who wouldn't, and that was so powerful. Like I just have a super guilty conscience. I've always been a very honest
Yeah.
person. So I was obviously not one to cheat, but that exercise meant a lot, and it impacted me. I think obviously my knowledge of U.S. history, but also kind of you're in that formative mode in high school, really asking yourself, who are you, right? Like what kind of person are you, and who are you trying to become? And I think without an exercise like that, Mr. McKinney did us a great favor, because without an exercise like that, I don't think we'd ever really taken a hard look at ourselves like that. Am I an honest person or am I a liar? Right? You have to answer that. When he left the classroom, he said, you'll see around who's around you who are honest, and you'll see around you who are those who are dishonest. And gosh, that was so powerful. So if I think of my one single teacher, it'd be Mr. McKinney coming out of Rampart High School in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, that's
Incredible. Awesome. I'm thinking of, there's a difference between those teachers that have that poster that we've all seen it, in any waiting room or in any classroom that says like integrity is who you are when no one's watching. But for
Yeah.
that teacher to give, high schoolers an opportunity to exercise that integrity muscle and decide, and I'm sure there were kids that cheated one time and then, had to deal with the ramifications of feeling so guilty within
Yeah.
themselves, and then, eventually by the end of that semester, that school year, had grown to say, I don't want to deal with the guilt. I'm just going to put in the work to
Right.
study.
Yes.
But
And
you
what
know,
if
you
it comes to, like, peer pressure? Like, I'm watching
yeah.
a kid and, like, what am I gonna do if that kid's cheating and my friend over here is not cheating? And, like, just overall, what a great, like, what we call soft skills test, and, like, who are you and who are you letting influence you at the same time?
Yeah, yeah, we do a great job at education teaching curriculum and skills, but sometimes I wonder, do we put that other effort into building, just good humans?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
you said it so beautifully, giving kids a chance to exercise that muscle, right? Like, um, because I look back to where I am now, like I think about those, and he did it throughout the year. It wasn't just a one-time thing. He really did was trying to teach us a larger lesson, and I try to embrace that when I work in the job that I do and my work with kids. Yeah, I want you to understand certain things, but there's also larger things that education has an impact on, and I
Totally.
Yeah.
sometimes think we lose sight of that.
Yeah,
Yes,
sometimes we do.
absolutely.
It also gives kids an opportunity to explore, who they are as a person, what integrity means to them in
Yeah.
a space where, the worst thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to fail at test right now.
Right.
Mhm.
Instead of kids waiting until they're not given that opportunity until they get to college or, graduate school, or God forbid their first job or second job, and then the opportunity to cheat to get ahead comes and they get caught doing it, or, and there's huge consequences to it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yep.
for sharing that powerful example, like, what a highlight in your experience. Let's flip it a little bit. Can you tell us a time or some can you tell us about something you wish would have been different in your K-12 educational experience?
Boy, I hope that's kind of maybe what we get to dive into today is maybe the meat and potatoes of this recording. I think it would
Yeah.
be
That's
access
our
to career and technical education training, and also access to you know real meaningful work-based learning experiences, whether that's internships and apprenticeship, some way to get kids involved. I wish I had the opportunity to practice some things I learned in high school and then actually go into the field and try them. Um,
Mhm.
you know, I, I, I have a kid who was doing an internship at a credit union and got, I don't think the account balanced when the customer was checking in or out. I'm not sure the proper terminology here, but we all know what happens if our balance isn't what we think it is and how somebody reacts. And
Uncomfortable.
that young man caught some of that from that customer and maintained composure, understood how he needed to get, this is out of his scope. He needs to go
Mhm.
get his manager, but that learning experience talking with that kid, I saw tremendous growth over the
Yeah.
semester. And that was one example of something that really did help elevate him.
Mhm.
We can't replicate that in the classroom. Kids get to know who your teacher is, and your teacher can get mad at you, but it's way different if it's somebody you aren't familiar with and you don't know. And it's those situations that I've seen kids just take the elevator to the top as far as their maturity. And I
Hmm.
think we need to pay attention to that in education. From a workplace, from a from an employer standpoint, there's some real concerns with kids coming into the workforce right now, lacking some
Yes.
some soft skills that are, and it's across the board.
Yeah.
So I think being able to help develop those. I just wish I had those same opportunities because I didn't. I went through a really traditional education. I'm sure
Yep.
probably many
Yeah.
are listening went through your traditional high school, and you took your core classes and your electives, and you tried to find some electives that maybe would fit something you're interested in a career, but that's vastly different than what we do. And I wish I had that access.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I also think of that traditional. I also attended a very traditional high school in Oklahoma, and I think of all those things I didn't get to explore because I went into high school very committed to my track career. That was my identity, and I kind of formed that. I got in really. I started running track when I was 6, and so by the time I was in like middle school, I was traveling for meets. I in 8th grade ran up on the high school team. So by the time I got to high school, there was no space on my plate to try drama class or to try any musical instruments at all. there was just not a lot of space for exploration because I had my core classes and I knew was going to have cross country and track. And that gave me space for like what, one, two electives. And then you
Right.
also have those, you
Mhm.
have to take so many languages classes and arts classes and those sorts of things. And I didn't get a lot of space to play and explore and figure out who and what I wanted to be and do.
Absolutely.
That's so funny. So I built an apprenticeship with uh, the name of the apprenticeship. We don't run it through Cherry Creek Schools, but it's the Athletic Atelier.
Yeah.
And the idea of the apprenticeship, and the individual I built it with, was that high school athletes that are in your situation, that are always traveling, that are always competing, they're missing a lot of stuff that
Hmm.
is designed within their high school experience to help them explore careers. Just use one. And so her apprenticeship is to work with high level athletes, to work with them in between practices, to kind of fill that gap and put them in experiences that will help develop that muscle, rather than just your athletes not getting access because they're always busy. And so
Yeah.
she was a similar athlete like you, and she recognized what she missed out on in high school, and she's
Mhm.
building an apprenticeship so that basically, higher level student athletes can get access to the same things everybody else does, but they're not, because they're always on travel. And so it's things like that that's
Yeah.
changing in education, the
Yeah.
innovation you're seeing, where it's like finally we're paying attention to how can we get creative and not just operate within the same system that we've always been in.
Yeah. We hear a lot from folks that we work with and people that we partner with, this kind of catch-all phrase of public education is broken, and we here at Mindspark deeply believe it's not broken. It's just looking for a revamp because of
Mhm.
how disconnected it is from industry. Like, you made the point earlier of how many folks in the work field are really nervous about
Yeah.
this new generation of workers coming into the work field because of the lack of development around the soft skills. And I mean, I just don't think it's fair to sit here and look at public education and say that that's what's broken when we're the ones, feeding into the system.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, and I would absolutely agree on that. I would also say I think we in education can lean in a bit on that and figure out ways to work with students on those. And at the CCIC where I work, 30% of a kid's grade is based on those soft and professional skills. 30%.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so we are grading kids on professionalism, on being able to collaborate, being able to handle critical feedback, and not letting it just like destroy you. Embracing failure, right? Like I don't know anybody in this world, any business in this world that doesn't improve unless they fail. It's
Yeah.
like it's a necessary process to go through to improve. And we see it all over. I mean, if you want to get in shape, guess what? You got to work out, stress the muscle, and you grow from it, right? I mean, it's the same concept. And so we are very intentional about that at the Cherry Creek Innovation Campus, about not only giving kids constant feedback on those professional skills, but then coaching them to bring it up. So,
Mhm.
I always say, like, we don't do lunch detentions here. We don't do Saturday schools or after school. If you're not acting in that professional manner, it's going to reflect on 30% of your grade, which I think that is a creative way. I think education can shift a little bit and
Yeah.
try and meet those needs. And I don't think education's failing by any means, but I do think education, we need a bit of a facelift. We need to do some things differently. We got a lot of things that are working, but and that's why I love the work I do. I can be part of that small adjustment of change, and then we can really amplify what we are good at. And but it takes some doing things a bit differently than we've seen historically.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
how awesome for those kiddos that, their math muscles in their brain aren't very, naturally strong, or their reading comprehension skills are looking for some improvement, but they have excellent, patience and collaboration skills. Um, Getting graded on that. I mean, I'm just thinking of so many friends and family members that would have excelled so much more in the school format if they'd been
Mhm.
graded on those skills in conjunction with, not just how they did on their science test, but how they acted in that group project and how they treated their partners in that group project.
Well, and I think too, at least the work I do as well, it's attractive for companies and organizations to know that those
Mhm.
skills are being worked on. If,
Yes.
if you interact with private industry and are in my role, That is something you hear loud and clear. So to be able to say to somebody, listen, we are paying attention to this, and then to hear the feedback when our kids come back from an internship or an
Yeah.
apprenticeship or job
Yeah.
shadow, and they go, wow, your kids really stuck out, you know,
Mhm.
well, talk to me about why, and they will go into those things. They came and shook my hand and asked me how my day was. Like, we just don't see that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
those little things that we can help our students get a bit of an edge up on if we're making intentionality about addressing those things, which industry is shouting loud and clear. Please
Yes.
work on these things. I mean, I can't tell you how many times industry will tell me I can build the technical skills. I can work
Hmm.
with the kid on the technical skills.
Yes.
I don't know how to build the soft skills, the resiliency. You know,
Yeah.
um, an employer shared an example of an entry level employee he had, and he said that um, and this isn't one of our students. This is him giving me an example of what they're up against.
Yeah.
And he said, we put this young individual on a task. It was to work on this machine, and we left him there for half the day. And so his team comes back about 5 hours later, and this new employee, again, not one of our students, he's just sitting there. And the guy goes up to him and says, what's going on? How far have you made? And the young man says, I don't know what to do. And he said, so why didn't you ask a question?
Yeah.
Like, you sat here for 5 hours waiting for me to come and ask you this question. Why didn't you come ask me? I don't know. And you're like, wow, like that's kind of what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Being able to advocate for yourself at the job site. Hey, I don't understand this. I need somebody to walk me through this, or at
Mhm.
least give me some guidance, or I've hit a roadblock and I
Yeah.
don't know where to go from here. But what he was up against is they just sat there and wasted 5 hours until someone come and check on him. It's like
Right.
it's a different world that we're
Yeah.
working with.
Yes. And one of the opportunities with those kids, so I currently learn that now, like you don't know until you're in it and you're doing it. I think about like I had a very traditional education as well. I became a teacher and I didn't know what I didn't know until I was in first day of school
Yeah,
with 25 kids looking at me and I was like, "Oh no, it's just us now. Like there's no one else that's gonna come in and save me at this moment in time." And you don't realize like you're like, "Oh, I think I know all these things. Oh, I can do that. I can do this." And you don't realize I feel like those lack of thereof or the people are looking for that. Like, I don't think they would know that employers are looking for the handshake, the eye contact more than like, oh, they want to know that I'm an expert in this field or in this
yeah,
industry. And so
yeah,
I think just bringing the light to that for kids
Yeah.
is so in a helpful ability first step. So
yeah,
Yeah, and
that's
we
awesome.
see a lot in that traditional school model because I relate to that kiddo from I'm remembering my very first professional job, and I was one of those kids that did really, really well academically. So I was in school forever. I didn't have my first like professional career job until, after I'd gone on and gotten other degrees after. Um, and much to my dismay, it did not benefit me to know everything. I didn't know that I was supposed to be asking questions. I had to learn the hard way in my first job. And I was really lucky to have a very patient and kind and great leader at my first career job who told me, like, hey, you got to ask questions. It's okay.
Mhm.
Because in that traditional school model, you're rewarded for knowing the answer to the questions. You're not rewarded for asking the questions.
right. Yeah, that's a great point. I had not thought about that, but that is a really, really good point.
Right. And I'm so glad you kind of touch on some of the importance of why industry partnerships and this experience for kids is so important. Can you speak a little bit to like what does that look like for kids in Cherry Creek in their classrooms and like what does that role of CTE really play for them?
So, um, are you curious about like CTE within a student's kind of high school experience, or how we incorporate CTE and industry partnerships in their work-based learning? Like, how does that all look?
Both, yes,
Yeah.
whatever kind of way makes sense to talk about.
Yeah. So, kids, Cherry Creek's a large district, and we have CTE programs embedded in all of our high schools. Um, in 2016, we passed a bond to build a standalone career and technical education center known as the Cherry Creek Innovation Campus. And it just really kind of expands on what's available to students. So while there's a bunch of CTE within the home high school, students that want to access something a bit different and a bit more advanced can apply to come over here. The application process is merely a way for them to express interest. We don't have barriers for kids to come here.
That's
Um,
awesome.
we're,
Yeah.
you know, to be honest, kids learn in different ways. I've seen kids when I was a counselor that struggled at the home high school and came over here and, rolling A pluses in auto mechanics. They had a different way and a different interest. And so students beginning in 10th grade can come to this building or they can access from their home high school. And then what we do, or what I do, is I work to establish partnerships with organizations, private companies, government agencies, nonprofits, around taking those kids that have certain specific skills within CTE. Many of them have earned industry credentials, and working with them or speaking with employers about them considering working with these students as, say, interns, entry level employees. The job market right now on the entry level space, I think I'm older than you guys by a lot, but I'd say in our age group, it's still pretty competitive. I think the
Mhm.
job market, however, that entry level space is wide open. I mean, I've not seen opportunity like this for kids in my whole career in education. And so,
Mhm.
speaking with those companies, and then we, we have an internal system, but let's say a kid passes auto mechanics and they got their auto service excellence one, those kids have real skills. And you look at auto mechanic shops right now that are just struggling to find,
Yeah.
talent, trying to find anybody who's interested. Their
Mhm.
their ears are wide open and they say, hey, let's give us a chance to work with the student. They obviously can't do everything, right? They're an intern, and but it works out really well because that employer now gets access to a student with the skills needed to work in there. They just haven't graduated; they're still continuing their education. And so that student will go over and work as an intern. We'll customize that schedule for that student, right? The big thing is everyone thinks, well, how are you going to do this on a school schedule? And you go, well, you work with your home high school counselors, you have good relationships with them, and you kind of
Mhm.
custom build those schedules. So,
Yeah.
a kid may have, we work on a block schedule, but a kid may have, you know, all of their core classes on one day. The
Yeah.
next day we put them in, their auto 2 class that gets over at noon, and then they're heading off to their internship site for the rest of the day and work until, 6 o'clock at night, getting some experience. And the next day they're at their home high schools doing their core classes. They're
Mhm.
not at the shop. The next day, boom, take some auto, go in and do their internship. And those will lead to many of the partnerships we build have either youth apprenticeships attached to them or
Okay.
adult apprenticeships. So you think about pipelines of talent. Now industry partners engage with us, providing a great experience for a kid. We're very happy because that kid is putting those, say, muscles to work on
Yeah.
exercising those skills around their technical skills. They're getting access to a workplace learning environment, which is safe. I
Yeah.
vet companies. I go do site visits. I make sure these places are safe for our kids, and
Zero,
that then
eight,
becomes part of their learning. And so we
digit,
typically place kids in internships
subtract,
between summer, junior
divide.
summer, and senior summer.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, between junior and senior year. So that's summertime.
Yeah.
Because what we find is those kids will work as interns quite a bit for these companies. And then
Mhm.
what happens in August? Well, the companies go, this was great talent. Like I thought I was just getting an intern, but now I'm looking at losing them. So my phone starts ringing. Hey, how can I keep this kid for senior year? Can you speak with them? You're going to have to talk to them first. The kid agrees, then we build that senior year schedule so that kid can continue on that internship. I will say 99% of these are paid. The days of unpaid internships are kind of behind us. I still have some industry partners who are able to pay, and we don't require it.
Yeah. Sure.
But it's that's a new wrinkle that I've seen when I was going through high school. Like there was no such thing as a paid internship. Now kids are actually going and working and making money, and there's pride in what they do. They're learning
Yeah.
in what they do, and
Yeah.
they don't always work out perfectly. But I actually think imperfect is kind of perfect because if you do an internship and you go, this wasn't for me, that's not bad. You figured that out at an early age that maybe this isn't what you want to do. So it can help kind of help steer that student. And so, we'll customize schedules, place kids. It's really, really cool to see. And then then you watch the maturity just happen. It just
Yeah.
takes over. I've always said this, if you give kids real responsibilities, and
Mhm.
getting to class on time is not a real responsibility, right? Getting to your job on time is a real responsibility. Being there for your shift and engaged is a real responsibility. And when you give students that, they rise. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. I feel like as educators, we doubt our kids, and I'm like, don't doubt them, believe in them. They are
Yes.
going, you're going to stretch them, but they will make it. They will always, I've
Yes.
not seen a kid go in and not do well. I've seen sometimes a site isn't a good fit, right?
Yeah.
But as
Mhm.
far as like kids take these very seriously. They know they're given an opportunity to do something and they make something of it. It's really cool.
Yeah, they had some ownership over their educational experience, and I think we all only have our own personal experiences, but I remember I didn't get the opportunity to explore careers until I was knee deep into law school. And so that's really late in the game to start exploring jobs. And I remember my first internship was with Oklahoma Innocence Project, which very cool work. I was very moved by the work they do. It took me about all of 2 weeks into that summer to figure out I wanted nothing to do with criminal law, and I'm dollars and years into this investment,
Yeah.
as opposed to having gotten the opportunity to maybe shadow a criminal attorney or, do research for them as a high schooler. I would have known so much earlier that I wasn't interested in that.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
And Keisha and I recently met someone who's in a blue collar field, and we're having a really hard time finding people kind of in our age who are like
Yeah.
willing to actually go like put their hands in and work. Because I feel like when we were in kids, it was like go to college, go to college, go to
Mhm.
college. They're promoted as different things, and so now I feel like we're seeing the backlash of that. So I
Yeah.
feel like what I like about your work is that we're kind of promoting this really inclusive culture all across the board of like what kids can do and where they can go, but what that looks like too, so that they're prepared to go into those fields, in those industries with those skills. Those partners are probably so thankful that those kids are coming back with
Yeah.
those skills, and so it's just a win-win across the board, and that's so great.
And we've seen those economic reports, the folks that are working in the trade industries, like those are our
Oh,
next millionaire and billionaires.
easy,
Mhm.
And
easy.
we're all part of that generation where we were steered away from those kinds, in so many words and, in so many ways. We were kind of geared towards, no, you want to go be a professor and a doctor and a lawyer, all great careers, but they're no better or no, more or less lucrative than someone that can
Yeah.
a great mechanic or, HVAC or any of those
Yeah, go
types of
get your furnace worked on and tell me how much they charge you for just showing up at your
exactly.
house. Not
Yes.
even doing the repair. It's like a $300 fee just to get them to your house.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
backed into my garage recently. That's expensive.
And the
Yeah.
things that we need daily or very
Mhm.
often, like comparatively to some other fields.
You know, I some statistics that will make you kind of wake up if you're listening to this, but we need to produce 80,000 electricians every single year for the next 10 years just to keep up with the retirements.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, we're who cares
Well,
about AI and quantum and all these
and
other things if we have no electricity, we have no
True.
electricians.
Yes.
Well, and the scary part is when you really start to think this out, you think about that knowledge lost if we're not producing that many
Mhm.
electricians, you know? So these tradesmen that are working and going into retirement, if they're not handing that knowledge off to the next one in line, we're in trouble, right? And so
Yeah, there's so much
all
field.
trades are looking this similar. HVAC, 300,000 welders by 2030.
Mm.
You know, the next wave of millionaires are going to be the students who decide to go into the trades, perhaps do an apprenticeship, get a little work experience, and then open up their own business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I preach this all the time to students, and I do think the generation, I think it's Gen Z that we're seeing kind of make their way through. They are paying attention. They're a much more
Mhm.
savvy generation. They're asking about debt in college. What's
Mhm.
my ROI when I'm all done with this? And does it make sense? Do I need to do an internship first before I go into college and see if this is for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are seeing kids ask those questions, and that is something new. As a counselor, I started my career in counseling at the high school in 2010 ish, 29, 2009, and you weren't hearing those questions being asked.
Yeah.
I'm really
Mhm.
proud of this generation of kids. They're paying attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're,
That's refreshing here.
yeah.
Yes.
I volunteer with STEM Blazers and I'm a chapter leader at one of the Cherry Creek schools and
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's super cool. It's a great opportunity, but to echo what you just said, uh, these are high school girls who they're all very interested in STEM careers, and so we did a medical field day and brought in 8 different women that work in 8 different spaces in the medical fields. And the second question that came from these girls is, "Can you guys go around the room and tell us how much you invested in your education and what it costs?"
Yeah.
And I mean, the stark difference, so many points here. One of them, the stark difference between one of the women who has been an OBGYN for about 10 years, she's top of the line at her hospital. She's writing curriculum for medical schools. She's really, really in there. She said that her education cost her around $200,000.
Oh,
One of the people on our panel is a current medical student, and she busted out laughing when she heard that and said, "I take out $200,000 in student loans every year, and I eat ramen for dinner every
oh my
night."
gosh.
Mhm. It's wild.
And I mean, for these high schoolers, these 16 and 17-year-olds to ask, what is this actually going to
Yeah.
cost me? And to think about that. And then the career they ended up being the most interested in was a good friend of mine who came to be on the panel. She's in medical device sales, and she does the demonstrating for the doctors. And then she scrubs up and is in open heart surgeries because the product it's something similar to like a pacemaker. And so she's in there like helping the doctors, making sure it goes
Yeah.
in correctly and it's working correctly. And all of the girls were like, never heard of this career, and she was the one who had invested, the least amount of dollars into her education and was making, the same amount of money as these doctors and, just as happy with her career, if not happier.
Yeah. I'll add something, and just because you had mentioned your work with stem lasers,
Mhm.
to the female audience out there, one thing I would really pay attention to is you should be part of this story as well. Just because these are
Mhm.
certain jobs that have been stereotyped towards
Yeah.
males doesn't mean anything. I was just at an auto shop. I won't say the name, but as I'm talking to him about apprentices that are on the staff, the number one apprentice is a female. The
Yeah.
attention to detail, they females can fill these roles just as much as males, and oftentimes they do it better.
Yeah, they bring a
So
whole different perspective
yeah,
to that space, like you mentioned, the attention to detail and some of those skills that are just inherent and biologically,
yep,
we're all that science behind those sorts of things.
yeah,
Yeah.
You gotta count the girls in, always.
yeah, absolutely, yes.
So, Ryan, just open it honestly. Do you think higher education still delivers on the promise it once did and still has the same value maybe it has traditionally?
So I'd say it's a tough question. I will say I think higher ed's going through some growing pains right now. I think they're
Mhm.
having to relook at the model they have had,
Mhm.
and they are having to adjust. You're
Yeah.
seeing some of that. You're actually seeing the community colleges lead that. If you look
Yeah,
at what Community
definitely
College of
are.
Aurora is doing, to Rapo Community College, to Front Range, there are some really cool things the community colleges are doing. If there's any students out here listening to this podcast, I would say consider the community colleges. I think the
Yeah.
4 years are a bit behind the wheel, and I think you are going to see them struggle. I'm not sure what that means. I think some of their endowments, I think, will get them through where they need to be. But I will personally say I came from a career in corporate finance, and I do think there is something to be said about having to reinvent yourself. There's a saying, steel
Mhm.
sharpens steel, right?
Mhm.
The community college, I think, got a great leg up, and it's forcing the 4 years to go, what are we doing? Right. And
Yeah.
you're starting to see them adjust. I think they're a little bit behind the wheel, but the fact that I think that they're kind of waking up to this is good. That said, I do think that we in the high school space need to keep pushing students to really consider, as college makes sense for them. Ask the tough questions. I was known for that as a counselor. I'd almost have kids, I want you to defend your decision to go to college. That should be
Yeah.
easy. That shouldn't be like, oh, how do I do that? You should know why you're going, what you're aiming for in your future, and not heading to see Boulder because you love black and gold and the team Colts, right? Like that's not the reason to go and spend $27,000 to $35,000 a year. And so
Yeah.
I think that is starting to happen. You're starting to see the high schools, I think, kind of ask kids, does this make sense? There's more attention to that. I think college will always be around, but I do think that there is a small, I don't want to say reckoning, but I do think that they are going to have to figure out what they're doing, or they're going to become irrelevant. And I actually think the community colleges will take a big step forward in that space. I still value college. We
Mhm.
100% support kids who go to college. College was great for me. I just think that they need to do some. They're going through some adjustments, some growing pains right now, and that's not a bad thing. Businesses go through that,
Yep.
right?
Right.
You're starting to see that with Google. They've traditionally been a search-based engine. That's where they generate revenue. You see open AI come on board. It's pulling that away, and Google's having to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. How do we stay relevant? What are we going to do differently? And they're changing. I think the same things happen with college. They're going to have to figure. They're going to have to do that facelift piece, and I hope they do. I think college is a great experience for kids, and then I also think the other thing they need to pay attention to that I think they're going to see is that the cost. Like
Yeah,
it's like if you look at the acceleration of the cost of college, it's like how do you keep up with this? So
Rayats.
they're going to have to figure that out too. So I think there's some good pressures being placed on the university system, and I
Yeah.
think they'll answer the call. You know,
Yeah.
colleges in Colorado are doing a great job. CSU's made some different changes. CU Boulder, a lot of them are leaning into the work-based learning piece and funding departments that go and do what I do and develop partnerships so that their kids have someplace to go and can actually get into an internship and practice some of the skills that they've learned at the university. I think that's a big, big win for them. And I think if they continue to lean in that direction, they're going to be fine.
Yeah. So to piggyback on that, are there other alternatives to traditional schooling that you would suggest kids consider, like
Oh.
besides college and college? Like, what do those look like?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think number one, I don't think if you are a student and you don't know what you want to do, I would honestly choose some different options. Maybe a gap year is something that you should consider.
Mm,
Gap year, you can, if you structure it in a way that makes sense, whether that be volunteering experience, there's gap programs that kids can get involved with if they're not quite at that maturity level yet to enter college or they don't know. I don't think it's bad to get a job and start working see some different things. Obviously, I'm a believer in the apprenticeship model. That is taking the nation by storm. It's only going to get more relevant. If you look at what Colorado's done and what Governor Polis has done through the state apprenticeship agency, they've actually created an
mhm,
agency to help intermediaries and businesses and individuals like me build these things so that there's actually something in place. It's registered with the Department of Labor. Um, in fact, if you were to go and you can Google the state apprenticeship agencies and see all of the apprenticeships that are out there that kids can go and get some experience and try out. Apprenticeships are a bit longer in duration, so the internship's always a good option for kids. I think a half-year internship. We had a class of seniors graduate, and I know at least I'd say 15 to 25 of them are going to go do an internship, right? They're
mhm,
going to graduate and go work with the company and see what they want to do. So I think that's an option. I'm also a proponent. I think military is a great career for the right student. I've seen that just work miracles on some, not personally, some family members that I've seen join that I'm like, wow, you own a house now. Like I never thought that something would have helped develop you into who you are now, and it worked
yeah,
out really well for him and her. Um, and then also, just getting an entry level job. A
Yeah.
lot of companies
mhm,
right now are not, they're so desperate for workers. As long as you're willing to show up and put your work ethic in and ask questions, like there's some great companies that are hiring. In fact,
yeah,
I'll tell you this: there's an engineering company that I am partnered with, and they specifically don't, for their interns, they don't want students who are going to college. They
mhm,
want to train them first
yeah, yeah,
and then determine if the college is right and they agree on it, then they're going to help those kids go to college. But they flat said, like, do not send us kids who are college bound. I'm thinking, what? Like, I've
mhm,
never
That's so bizarre for all of us.
hard
Yeah,
reading
our
here,
education.
but okay, we'll market that. And that's what they want. They want to be able to be the ones to see kind of
yeah,
develop them on their own and then develop them on their own so much that then they help them go to college. And so now they're the loyalties there.
Yeah.
Those types of companies are out there. So I tell kids,
mhm,
like don't be afraid to put an application in. Don't be afraid to go and talk to a company. I'll tell you a little tip. If I learned this at a conference because a lot of applications get clogged up in they go through like a screening process first, right before. So sometimes you apply and you don't even know if it gets in front of a human. All right, for the listeners out there, copy the job description, put it on your resume, and then make it white. Right, so it's page 2 of your
mhm,
resume. Then
Hmm.
submit it because it's going to have every single word they're looking for because it came from the actual
mhm,
job description itself. No one will know because it's whited out, but the data is still being collected as it's processing through the system.
Hmm. And
So
honestly, even if they did find out, I think it would give you a leg up.
that's creative. It's creative.
Talk about innovation. It's a great
Yeah.
tip. I think a lot about I have a cousin, a younger cousin, and we both grew up in Oklahoma. We both went through Oklahoma school systems. And, we're from the same families, we're from the same gene pools. We're still very, very different. And he went through an untraditional model. He is dyslexic and struggled with the traditional schooling, kind of was a little bit left behind, but those soft skills, incredible, incredible soft skills. And a lot of that happened from my dad. Is an entrepreneur and does like a couple different things. And one of the things that he used to do is own a landscaping business. And
Yeah.
my cousin would work for him. My cousin now runs a landscaping business
Yeah.
and makes double what I make.
Yeah.
And, I've got a law degree under my belt. He didn't go to any type of traditional schooling. He went straight into the workforce
Yeah.
after. But he had that opportunity to develop the soft skills and explore alternative options. And I come from a family with European background and, my dad's African American. So college was important and it was stressed to us as important, but it wasn't any less important as what my cousin decided to go do.
Yeah.
No one looks at him and thinks that he's less than I am because I've got degrees under my belt. They look at those soft skills and I just think of how many kids don't necessarily get that experience, and it's
Right.
not their fault. It's just, parents grew up in a different generation,
Yeah.
but yeah. Luckily, we've got kiddos whose parents are probably still paying student loans, and they're like, "Wait a second before you sign up for that 4 year college." That's
You,
very bad.
and that taps on an interesting piece too. I'd also encourage the students who are listening to this as well, consider the community colleges. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't know that the community colleges have an articulation agreement with the 4 year colleges. They basically, your first 2 years will kind of guarantee transfer up.
Yeah.
Right? So
Mhm.
you can take classes if you're like, hey, I want to go to college, but I don't know what I want to do. Well,
Right.
maybe take a pause. Maybe it's not time to move out of mom and dad's house and go spend 40 grand a year. Maybe
Yeah.
you live at home another year and take some community college classes, get some access. It's much more affordable,
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
more affordable. You're not going to bury yourself in debt and you can still explore what these
Mhm.
classes have and still get an idea. And then, after a year or two, if you think, hey, I'm ready to go after this engineering degree, great, jump up to the 4 year
Yeah.
university. I mean, there's
Yeah.
things you would want to do. You'd want to meet with advisors on both institutions, make sure your classes will transfer. I mean, do it the smart way, but that's available and you can do your first 60 credit hours at such a cheaper price and
Yeah,
see
you
if it's
save
for you.
yourself a lot of money.
Yeah.
Those
And then
student
after 2 years, if
hit
you're like,
hard.
this is nuts, I'm not doing this, then you didn't go into debt.
Yeah.
You
Right.
tried it
Yeah.
and you didn't go into debt. Where if you went away for the 4 years and you came back after two, you're gonna. I mean, assuming your parents don't pay for it and you don't have, you're gonna be in debt. There's just
Yeah.
no for a while.
Yeah.
And that's actually, if you look at, there's something called, I think, the Colorado paradox, and it talks about how kids are, 100 kids go into high school. Of those 100, 85 graduate. Of those 85 that graduate, and I don't know what the numbers exactly are, but it starts clicking down, right? And of the 85 graduate, you have 60 that go on to their first year of college, and after their first year, it dramatically drops off. And so you start thinking, you go, okay, so these kids went to college, took out debt,
Yeah.
and now are not returning. So now they don't have a skill still. They don't know where they're going to go, and they're carrying a bag of debt on. And keep in mind, I
Mhm.
always say this, debt in school debt is the one thing you can't flush in a bankruptcy. That will
No.
always be there. Yeah.
Yep.
And they'll garnish your wages like that debt. It's not like unsecured debt that can be tied into a bankruptcy. Your school debt will stay with you forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean that, as thankful as I am for my educational experience, I do sometimes think when I see friends my age buy houses, I'm like, I guess I'll just live under my 2 degrees because that's my house. That's my mortgage payment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
There. I know at one point in time, the state of Iowa produced a documentary, and I believe it was called Broke, Busted, and Disgusted. And it's a good, I believe they had every single high school graduate, senior, it was part of the requirement. They had to watch this movie, and it talked about the debt. And I believe it was produced by the banking system in Iowa because the private industry was trying to get in there. Like, how do we help? you know,
Yeah.
it's that education piece, and it's hard, when kids are in that senior year, they're thinking about college. There's dreams. It's hard to talk to them about affordability.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a national conversation we're having right now, and I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
We've also spent decades, I'm glamorizing it. I'm thinking of just the social aspects of college. So many kids that, they're not really thinking totally, and who can blame them? They're 18 years old. They're not thinking about their future in terms of debt and money and income and strategy and those sorts of things. They're thinking about what's relevant, their social
Right.
life. And we've glamorized that college experience for decades.
Yeah.
Think of all the movies, and there's a lot of undoing to do.
Right.
That's a great way to say it. An undoing to do. There is a lot of undoing to do. Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt, there's some undoing to do. Like I said,
Yeah.
college is a great thing for the right kid. That's where
Yeah.
I say I'd land.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that we, at least in Cherry Creek, are talking about what other options are there for kids than just feeling like they have to go to college. Um,
Yeah.
and one thing you can look at, if you want to see some data, go look up summer melt. I'm not sure if you guys know what summer melt is, but when
Mm-mm.
kids leave high school, high schools typically will have kids apply for college, right? That's part of
Mhm.
the role, right? So they're getting kids to apply to college. Well, when you look at the data of kids that have applied for college that senior year and they're leaving compared to the number that show up, that's
Mm.
what summer melt is. A lot of it melts off because were those kids really serious about going to college? Did something
Mm.
change and what is their backup? Do they have a backup, or was it just what is happening with these kids that melt off? That's one thing I really want to pay attention to is what are we doing with those kids, and why are they melting? Are they melting off because they can't afford it, because mom and dad changed their mind, or are they melting off because it's, well, I had to fill this out because I'm graduating high school and I got to put this
Yeah.
in and I don't really know what I'm doing and I haven't had a real
Yeah.
conversation about that. Really scary when I look at summer melt numbers.
Totally. On that kind of same coin, then, to kind of get ready to wrap this up here, what's one challenge or opportunity, especially in education, you would suggest listeners tackle head on right now? And why is there nothing like the present to get started?
I if I could do, and this is just my opinion, I'm going to be biased on the role I have, but if I think there's a challenge, but I think it's the same opportunity. If I was in education, if I was a traditional classroom teacher, if I was an elective teacher, I would be trying to connect with industry and figure out how are my skills that I'm teaching my kids be relevant in some type of job. Okay. And I
Yeah.
think that requires innovation. It requires different thinking. Um, and I think that's hard for educators because it's always been, well, my job is just to get them to college. And I think
Yeah.
that is a challenge because if the if the college for all model is starting to show some fractures, right, and we're starting to talk about different things and different options for students, how is your curriculum relevant to that? And I
Yeah.
think that's a challenging question to ask, but I think there's tons of opportunity within it. I had a conversation with a few teachers, and I've spitballed, foreign language. Who does translations? Right? I
Yeah.
know there's translations going on in hospitals, there's translations going on in school districts, there's translation going on in the
Yeah.
courts. How
Yeah.
is your foreign language going to give a student a leg up in the workforce? How, a computer programming teacher, are you connecting with industry that maybe your kids that are high level can go and work with, or you can bring them in your classroom and show those kids why taking AP computer science is relevant and how it can help them in their future? And I think
Yeah.
when you incorporate industry into that, I think it kind of pierces the conscience of kids. We all know this. You probably know this with your parents or your spouses, or we tend to kind of numb out those people that we know care about us.
Yeah.
I I don't know why. I'd have parents say, I tell this to my son all the time, and you say it, and he listens to you, and I'm like, it's a different person delivering the message. I'm no better than you. Trust me, you're
Right.
a father,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I am a different person in their life that delivers a message differently, and they do pay attention to that. And I think
Mhm.
industry can do that for our kids too.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost anything, right? This isn't, we're not, I'm not paying industry anything. A lot of industry wants to work with our kids. They want to invest in the next future. And especially if they're an industry part of an industry that is just dying for workers, they're even more wanting to get into and work with your kids. So I'd say, the challenge is, how do we, make public education the strongest force that we have? And I think we need to pivot a little bit and start bringing in industry and not be so just perfectly aligned with college. I think you can have a
Yeah.
bit of both.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say is the challenge, but I also think there's a huge opportunity for education to
Mhm.
do some things and to really reinvent how we do it. And I think we're a living proof over here at the CCIC that um, this works, right? And
Yeah.
industry
Absolutely.
pays attention, and our kids have value, and our kids are getting jobs. And um, we just Cherry Creek passed another bond. We're building an extension on this building. We're adding
Yeah.
full
That's
HVAC
cool. It's
pathway, full
exciting.
welding, an event center. I mean, and these are all those jobs that we're talking about that you
Mhm.
don't necessarily need to go to college. You may need to go through an apprenticeship, which, by the way, is, in my opinion, kind of college. I actually tell
That
parents
old school
this.
model, before they had traditional, I mean, for myself personally, before they had traditional law school and a bar exam, it was an apprenticeship.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Europe never let go of it. It's the
Yeah.
most widely available, proven model that works and has lasted the test of time. If you're a kid and you go up to a college and you live in a dorm, you're maybe going to have an RA, right?
Mhm.
And the RA, really, let's be honest, is to like resolve conflict. Like
Yeah.
they're not trying to mentor you.
No,
Right.
they're also probably a junior or a senior that
Yeah,
has seen
and
how much how many
they
student
want a
loans.
free place to live, right? That's why they be an RA, right? I get it. And so then you may have a professor who knows your name, right? Some of the bigger universities, you go through an apprenticeship, you're going to be next to people, let's say you were to go into, welding. You're
Mhm.
going to be around a bunch of welders who are going to really mold you. They are going to invest in you. They are going to mentor you. You are becoming one of them. And they take
Mhm.
a lot of pride in that. If you show up late, they're going to probably pull you aside and be like, we don't do this over here. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This the way we operate in here is this. And that's the mentorship that an apprenticeship offers. And I don't think you get that in college, right? The only
No.
problem with the apprenticeship right now is it's not scaled out enough where everybody can get access to.
Yeah.
And I think that is where you're seeing my principal and I flew out to Washington, D.C. last year, and he delivered Senate testimony to Governor Hickenlooper, who's
Yeah.
trying to push, like, I think it was like $500 million to
Yeah.
incentivize companies
Yeah.
to do this work with education facilities, right? And so I think once that scales up, we'll see much larger numbers. But yeah, I believe in it. I think it's an awesome opportunity for kids, and I'm thankful to be able to speak with you guys and get the message out the best I can, because I do think the more we
Yeah.
talk about it, the more we acknowledge it. I think
Absolutely.
it's important for our national conversation.
Yeah. And this is the right crowd. I mean, the majority of the work that we do here at MindSpark, our bread and butter is going into schools as early as that, K through 5 space. We work, all through K through 12, but our work is primarily focused on going in, upskilling teachers, figuring out how they can get industry professionals into their classroom and shifting that learning model into, we call it PBL, problem-based learning, and having kids sit at the table with industry
Yeah.
professionals and try to workshop how to solve real problems that affect their community that these industry professionals are currently working on. Because the thing is, a lot of times these kids are personally impacted by this. One example, we're about to engage in some work with Weld County around food insecurity, and it's 1 in 3 kids are relying on public services or the food bank to get their dinner. Why not have those kids be part of that solution and sit
Right.
down with those, economists and grocery store planners and owners and managers and figure out, what are the solutions here? Where can we find them? And letting those kids' voice be at the table and be heard and
Yeah.
let them have agency over their education.
They know it best. We're in those situations.
So
Yeah.
I'll say two things. First, I'll invite you guys out to the CCIC, take a tour. We could record our second podcast if you wanted after more content. You're welcome to come on out. And then the second thing I would say is one of my goals for next year is to tap on exactly what you did. So we actually refer to it as like a work sponsored project.
Yeah.
Right. And
Mhm.
so an industry partner has something they're trying to solve. How do we push that into a classroom? And now, you know, 4 sections of 30 kids are getting access to this problem. That's work-based learning. It's a
Yeah.
different form. It's
It's
not an internship or an apprenticeship, but you're working on, one that came through was like, how do you design a better cast for a hippopotamus?
yeah. I mean,
Great
seriously.
problem for kids to chew on and
Yeah.
design. They use their technical skills, CAD SolidWorks, researching, trying to find. And there are different casts out there. I'll be honest, they're 3D printing casts now. They're not doing the
Yeah.
wraps anymore. Well, some
And it's
companies
so
still are,
cool
but
because those kids that might think that they're drawn to the art classes, or maybe they think they're drawn to, whatever subject it is, find themselves so immersed in that in their,
yeah,
whatever class, whatever teacher it is that's using that model. They're like, all of a sudden, I think I want to be a scientist, or I think I want to be a veterinarian. I never thought
yep,
that before. I thought I was going to be
yep.
an artist.
Yep. Yep. And I think that's where there's opportunity for our electives teachers. And it's just, how do you think differently than what you've done before? So if you are, that art teacher, you can get involved with industry
Yep.
that needs those skills, right?
Right.
And then how do you show those to your students? Pull in a project that you can work on in the year. And now your elective is creating value for the kid that would follow them into workforce rather than just a click on the mark to get into college,
Yeah, they're
right?
also working with those industry professionals, developing those soft skills because they're
Yep,
presenting their solutions
yep,
to, not a principal, not a teacher, someone who they might work for one day. It
right,
also opens up the doors of networking for kids that,
big time.
maybe they don't have a lawyer or a doctor in their family, and maybe they never saw themselves as a lawyer or a doctor. And then this industry professional came in, and all of a sudden they were like, wait a second, I kind of want to be like them.
Yes. Yeah.
They're building their social capital, that network of people that I recorded a podcast with a rocket scientist, and I had two of our interns with us, and they were so excited to be in the room when I recorded. I was like, it's no big deal, but come with me, guys. And when we left, the individual was like, you guys should add me as a friend on LinkedIn. And I
Yeah.
looked at them both and I said, go create an account
Do it
and
right
get
now.
with her right now, because
Yeah.
there's going to be a day where you may go, gosh, I remember Matt, I remember our contact. I'm going to
Yeah.
reach out to her. And they remember you guys. Like,
Yeah.
those small things we've never talked about that in education, and we're
Yeah.
starting
Yeah.
to. So it's,
And it can be intimidating and overwhelming a lot of times for
yeah,
those teachers that have been in the
yep,
education space for a really long time. And,
yep,
you know, we talked with someone yesterday who pointed out that, teachers are one of the only careers where you've already spent 18 years
Mhm.
seeing what that's supposed to look like. So you kind of already you've got some preconceived notions on what that's supposed to look like. And so a lot of the work that we
Yeah.
do, and Lauren's a past educator. Most of our facilitation team, if not all of it, they're all past educators. They've been in that classroom. And we believe in this model so much because we know it works. We know it and we also know and recognize how many hats teachers are already wearing. And so we point out to them, when you bring those industry professionals into the classroom, that's one hat you get to take off. Yeah.
right. And I think the challenge teachers run into on that is, how do they get those partnerships? I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I'm thankful. I am so lucky to work with Cherry Creek Schools that supports the work I do, because I couldn't imagine working in a district and I'm a teacher and I'm like, I'm supposed to go find them.
Yeah.
I
Like,
totally
we need
understand.
somebody full time doing that for us and handing them
Yes.
to us. And that's what I try and do. I have a good
Yeah.
partner who's doing photography, getting in touch with this photography teachers and saying, hey, I have somebody. Let's do
Yeah.
a call together. I'm gonna do a warm introduction, right? And we're gonna talk about these
Yes.
things and slowly try and pass that off. Now the management then becomes their job. Like, I can't manage all of them, but
Sure.
somebody to go out and bring those people in. I don't know how you do what we do without that. And that's the one piece that I do hope, as districts start paying more attention, that they consider funding a position like this, because I do think it brings a heck
Absolutely.
of a lot of value.
There's so much value.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, Ryan, this has been a breath of a fresh air conversation.
It really
Thank you
Yeah.
so
has.
much for your transformative thinking, your upskilling, and the work that both you and your team are doing for kids. You pointed to so many examples of how it's working for students, and I hope this inspires others to kind of jump on the same board.
Or
For
advocate for their local public schools,
yeah,
Go to your
Amen.
school board.
Amen.
Just advocate for this
yeah,
kind of model.
Amen.
yes. So for follow up, where can listeners find you moving forward from this podcast?
I have my own podcast that I record. It's called Career Conversations. Yeah. um, I, and the idea of my podcast is that the work I do, I get access to a lot of just unique individuals, fighter
Yeah.
pilots to F-15 mechanics to,
So cool.
I went to a bioengineering and saw them engineering
Cool.
skin and bone for bunion surgery. So I have access to all these unique individuals, and my podcast
Mhm.
is just around interviewing them. So if people want to tune in, it's Career Conversations. We're on all the major platforms. It's been
That's
a while since I've done a recording just because some things happening at my building, but I try to keep it live for our students. So as you guys touched on, kids sometimes I think families are doing the best they can. Mom and dad are
yeah.
working. They don't have time to provide the exposure.
Yeah.
And if I can provide some exposure by doing simple interviews with people from unique careers, it's one of the highlights of my day. So you come check me out on there, and I want to thank you guys for hosting and for the invite. I feel privileged to be here, and I feel like we could have talked all day. I feel there's very much
Oh,
yes. Absolutely.
Yes,
so
absolutely could have.
my
We'll
offer
definitely
to
be
come and see
scheduling
our
a tour,
school
though.
was absolutely 100% authentic, and I hope you guys take me up on it. It'd be a cool second half of this.
It
Yes.
really would. It really would. And we will.
Yes, we'd
All
love
right.
to, and you can like how we continue to partner because I think you've got the same visions ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna change the world.
Let's do it.
One school at a time, one student at a
Brick
time.
by brick. I always say, brick by brick, we'll change it.
Yeah, that's how you build. So that's a wrap on this episode of Think Difference. Before we go, one last question. I know we've said that a couple times,
Oh,
but
great.
we want to leave with one last spark. What's one idea, insight, or challenge that you want listeners to carry forward from this conversation?
Say one idea and challenge.
Yep.
Boy, the idea I would just encourage kids is to think very, very hard about your future. And I think experiences, more than just classroom experiences, will help you find that. And it's important to find that. I've always said that once you find what you're aiming at, the rest falls into place, like a GPS. Once you have point A and point B, fills itself out. So be open to being exploratory. Don't walk through high school thinking I know exactly what I want to do and I'm not going to listen to any other ideas. I think that would be the idea I would have for kids. And then the challenge I think I would say is confront the discomfort, right? It's not comfortable to try something new. But I think that you can measure where you're at in life and growth by how uncomfortability feels. So we go through periods in our life where things are really comfortable. And to be honest with you, that's when we probably are not growing. And then there's going to be moments where you're like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision. I think this is the best decision for me. And I'd ask you, how do you feel? Uncomfortable about that? Yeah. You're about to enter a growth period, and not a physical growth, but like a development growth. You're going to do something different than everybody else. And that can be scary, but don't avoid it just because it's scary. In fact, pursue those things that are fearful, because that is how you are going to grow in life. So that's a challenge I'd put out.
A friend of mine, she went through some big life changes within the past couple of years, and her go-to motto the whole time was "Do it scared."
Yeah, it works. But it's hard, right? It's hard to do the uncomfortable, but I promise you, if you do the uncomfortable, you will grow through it. And what we've talked about is it's uncomfortable, I think, for kids because we've done things for so long in the same way. And so, of course, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but don't not pursue it because of that. Don't pursue something because it's not right for you. Pursue it. If it's scary, but it's right for you, you're heading in the right direction.
Yeah. Love that. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate you joining MindSpark to discuss the importance of external partnerships in education, promoting those untraditional pathways through higher education. You've let listeners know where we can find you, so we'll wrap it up here. At MindSpark, we don't just think differently, we think difference. If this conversation sparks something in you, share it forward. Let's keep making the weirdest connections and create the biggest change together. Until next time,
stay curious,
stay bold, and keep thinking different.